Hey everyone, this is David Brown with the migration update for May 17th, 2024 from the Braddock Bay Hawk Watch. Kim and I started the day at the Braddock Bay West Spit, getting there before sunrise. Over the past few weeks, the duck variety on the bay has really gone down, and we were surprised to see this blue-winged teal today. Notice that white crescent on the face. Here's a plover that landed on the sandbar with us. We see double breast bands. This is a killdeer. Here's a large dark water bird with some yellow to the face and a hooked bill, and looking a little bit ragged. This is a double-crested cormorant. Here we have a small raptor with very pointed wings, so we should be thinking small falcon. Overall, it's light underneath with some vertical brown streaking to it. This is a female American kestrel. Here's a small heron. It's kind of compact looking. This is a green heron. Here we have a warbler that's overall black and white in color with black on the top of the head, white here on the cheek, overall white underneath with some black streaking and yellowish legs. This is a black-poll warbler. Here we have a somewhat large flycatcher that's dark on top, including most of the head, and white below with a white tail tip. This is an eastern kingbird. Here we have a stripy-looking sparrow where the base color to the underside is white, and it has some brown streaking, including a dot here in the center of the breast. This is a song sparrow. Here we have a somewhat large raptor with pointed wings. We should be thinking a large falcon, which makes this a peregrine falcon. And we see a lot of very dark streaking to the underside, making this a juvenile. Both at the West Spit and later at the Hawk Watch, we had several flocks of migrating cedar waxwings. This photo is pretty terrible, so I'm not even going to try to describe the bird, but there's been a ruddy turnstone hanging out on the beach of the barrier island, and it continued again this morning. We had a total of 67 species at the West Spit. From the West Spit, I could see some turkey vultures getting up, so came over to the Hawk Watch platform at Braddock Bay Park a little after 8 a.m., and it was a beautiful morning with partly sunny skies. The winds were out of the southeast and were at moderate speed. It was fairly warm, so it was really good conditions to get a hawk flight. As the day went on, it became overcast, and then eventually in the mid-afternoon, the wind did shift to a northeast lake breeze, and there was some rain moving in that ended the count early. The bulk of today's flight was made up of broad-winged hawks, turkey vultures, and this species, bald eagles. And I'm going to include quite a few photos of different bald eagles just to give an idea of some of the variety that we are seeing this time of year. Here we have an immature bald eagle, and we can see this one has a fairly dark head, but has a lot of white to the underside of the body and a lot of white throughout the wings. Here's a closer look at some cedar waxwings. You see that black mask to the face. On the underside, they're kind of a mix of tan and yellow colors, and they have a yellow tip to the tail. Here we have a juvenile broad-winged hawk, and this is pretty typical of the ones that we are seeing this time of year. Remember that broad-winged hawks are in the Buteo genus, along with things like red-tailed hawks and red-shouldered hawks, so they have kind of that standard hawk shape with a medium-length tail and somewhat broad wings. Broad-winged hawks have somewhat more pointed wingtips than the other Buteos that we see, like red tails and red shoulders, because the wingtip is only made up of 4 feathers rather than 5. On these juveniles, we see that they overall look quite pale underneath. They have a little bit of a dark trailing edge, but it's not as bold as it is on the adults. We see some brown streaking underneath, and we see that a lot of them this time of year are molting these inner primary feathers. So it's pretty typical to see these gaps here in the wing. Here's another bald eagle high overhead, and this one's getting pretty close to adult plumage. You can see it's starting to get that white head and white tail, but there's still a little bit of dark in both of those, and the underside of the body and the wings is mostly dark, but still has some splotchy white. Here we have a larger Buteo, and on this one we see a belly band and dark patagial bars, making this a red-tailed hawk. If we look at the wingtips, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 feathers making up the wingtip, so it doesn't look quite as pointed as it did on the broad-winged hawk. And again, this is a juvenile, so it's somewhat pale looking. You can see a lot of light shining through the wings. It does not have that bold, dark trailing edge that the adults would show. And it doesn't have the red tail. It has more of a pale tail with some banding to it. Here's another immature bald eagle. Again, we're seeing a large head. Overall, it's just a large, dark raptor. And this one's very messy looking. You can see how worn and faded a lot of the wing feathers are, and maybe some new feathers growing in. But overall, this bird just looks like a mess. But we do see a lot of splotchy white throughout the underside of the wings, especially in this wing pit area. Remember, bald eagles often show white in this area, whereas golden eagles do not. Here's another immature bald eagle. This one has a dark brown head, but a lot of splotchy white throughout the underside of the wings and the body. Here's another young bald eagle. This one looks like a juvenile, so one in its first year of life. We see a solid brown head, and most of the underside of the body is brown, maybe a little bit of white in there, but a lot of white here to the underside of the wings, and especially in this wing pit area. Here we have an adult bald eagle. We can see the completely white head and tail, and completely dark wings and body with no signs of any splotchy white. Here we have a raptor with a long tail and kind of long, narrow wings that are pointed at the wingtips, very plain overall underneath. This is a northern harrier, and because it's unmarked underneath and in the patagial area, that makes this a juvenile northern harrier. Here we have a small, dark raptor with pointed wings, so a small, dark falcon is a merlin. We had a class stop by today from SUNY ESF, and they were happy to see this male bobolink perched up in a tree. Here's one final look at a bald eagle. Again, notice that silhouette with a large head. On this bird, we see a dark head and dark underside to the body, and no signs of molt, no signs of uneven feathers. This looks like a fresh southern juvenile. Again, this time of year, we see a lot of juvenile bald eagles that were born south of us over the winter that are migrating north for their first spring. And the hawks were up pretty high today, so sometimes you just have to recline into a comfy position so you can spot them. From the Hawk Watch, we had a total of 59 species. Altogether, I had 85 species today. Taking a look at the hawk count report for our migrant raptor totals, today we had 95 turkey vultures, 4 osprey, 36 bald eagles, 9 northern harriers, 4 sharp-shinned hawks, 180 broad-winged hawks, 4 red-tailed hawks, 1 American kestrel, 2 merlins, and 1 peregrine falcon for a total of 336 migrating raptors. That brings the May total to 11,803 and the season total to 64,406. Taking a look at the forecast, tomorrow looks mostly cloudy with a high in the mid-60s and light northeasterly winds, so I would expect it to be light, maybe moderate migration, and we may have to move to Frisbee Hill because of that lake breeze. For Sunday, it's looking mostly cloudy and then partly cloudy with a high in the mid to upper 60s and light north-northwesterly winds, although I think later in the day that may actually be a northeast lake breeze. Expect light to moderate migration, and again, we may end up at Frisbee Hill. And for Monday, they're calling for a mix of sun and clouds with a high in the upper 60s and light northeasterly winds. We may end up over at Frisbee Hill again. Expect light to moderate migration. All right, another great day of birding. When I left the house this morning and was driving over to the West Spit, I saw some common nighthawks flying around, which is always really fun to see this time of year. The morning birding was okay over there at the West Spit. There wasn't really a lot of warbler variety, but we had some nice highlights throughout the morning and got to see some friends over there. And then we had beautiful weather to start the Hawk Watch, and we really ended up with a pretty steady flight today, although the birds were really high. It was kind of fun just spotting birds high overhead, picking out small groups of broadwings and all of the high streaming bald eagles. And then we had the excitement towards the end of the day with the class of about 30 college students coming out and coming up on the platform and then down onto the boardwalk. We got to witness them having to save a cell phone that had been dropped into the marsh. So lots of excitement, and then the rain shut things down a little bit early, so I had a chance to come home and get a little bit of rest and finish everything up early so I can be well rested for the next few days. Hope to see you out soon in the field or on the platform. From Lyco Birds, this is David Brown. Thanks for watching.